How did Huggy Wuggy survive? This is the biggest plot twist of 2025, mostly because we're only past January, but still, it's one of the craziest reveals in the game, which raises the question, how is he alive? Well, let's look all the way back to chapter 1 until now to see what exactly happened to Huggy and how he could have survived. After the vent chase, which was probably the scariest thing a man could experience at the time, we pulled down this giant box, causing Huggy to fall down probably hundreds of feet. But let's actually count the injuries. He then folds like a pancake, getting the wind knocked so hard out of him that it probably crushed his lungs. He slips off and hits the back of his head right on a metal pole, and although that would most likely cause death, he somehow managed to do it again, and then just for good measure breaks both sets of his teeth as he falls down into the pitch black, which might be why the desktop icon for the game shows him without teeth. Who knew that that was a spoiler this whole time? But lastly, he falls down for such a long time, we don't even hear him hit the ground. Now, if Mob expects us to think he could survive all of that and he just had to, walk it off, then I don't really have a theory here. But let's think of an actual realistic way that Huggy could have survived that, because any human would be dead for sure. Zero chance of survival. So the first thing I thought of was because we see him all the way at the very bottom of the factory, he probably landed somewhere near the bottom where we started in chapter 4, which could be when someone helped him. But before we answer who that could have been, where could he have actually landed to possibly cushion the fall? Well, it would have to be a place with no ceiling, meaning it's possible he landed there from the top of the factory, and it would have to be somewhere soft, like super soft. And the only place that fits that criteria is at the very beginning when we're surrounded by the countless piles of stuffed animals. There is no softer place than that. Now, the roof isn't entirely open, but he could easily land through one of these holes and hit his head on the way in, because he's clearly immune to head damage. But now the question, did someone actually help him? Well, from what we see in game, it's really hard to tell, but he actually does have belts around him just like Kissy Missy has, meaning he was also probably bandaged up either by himself or maybe someone helped him, because we can see that Kissy got help and literally got a whole arm sling, and so it's possible that her and Poppy went to the Safe Haven Infirmary first and then came to save us from the prototype. But it's hard to believe that this is where Huggy got his help. So the only other person who I could see is able to do this would be the prototype. I don't know of any other monster or person in the factory who would have the ability or motive to do this, because Yarnaby is more like an animal and not really that smart. Pianosaurus seemed to be isolated, and Harley Sawyer, although it seems like he can move around the robots near where he's at, he still seems limited to just activating stuff in the factory, and his robots are only right next to him. And so the only other person it really could have been would be the prototype, and maybe Doey. It's possible that Doey found Huggy and Huggy was too weak to attack Doey, so Doey could have taken Huggy in, healed, and even fed him, and then Huggy could have ran away after that. But here's the crazy part. How much time has actually passed since Huggy fell? And I'm talking about in-game time, because in reality he died years ago. But in-game, it can't be more than a day, and definitely not more than 2 days. This dude somehow fell all the way down. It only took him about a few hours or maybe a day for him to be able to walk again, and now he's trying to kill us. And so for chapter 5, I would love to see Mob try to make up something out of the top of their heads to get us to be able to survive Huggy if he survived that fall. And there's only one way I see this being possible, and I got this idea from a comment on another video, so credit to Angelito for this. The idea is that Huggy actually didn't survive and he would have to be a hallucination. And this actually might not be far-fetched because of the red smoke we see coming down on us at the end of the chapter. Because in chapter 3, once we enter into the red smoke, we're led down these huge hallways that can move and change, which is when we're finally led led into a room with a VHS tape, which at the end has Huggy crawl out of the TV in this weird and even more scary form. And when we try to run back out the hallway is gone and it's just a big dead end, leading us to getting eaten and then waking up in another place. But if you're thinking that the hallucination in chapter 4 happened way too fast for that to be true, then let me remind you of what it looked like in chapter 3, because it was the second we touched the smoke that the hallucination started, as the door that we just entered into disappears in an instant. And the last piece of evidence for this is that Huggy is damaged just like Kissy. He's limping, he's missing his arm even, and has the same straps around him that Kissy does, which leads me to believe we could easily be hallucinating Huggy's survival, as our last hallucination in chapter 3 also involved Huggy, and so this would be like a recurring dream. So in all honesty, with these facts, it's possible that Huggy didn't survive, but instead we're seeing Kissy as Huggy. Or if this theory isn't true, then the way that Huggy survived is that he could have gotten help from the prototype, because when the prototype sets off the bombs, what is the point of that? We literally fell and survived, probably because of our grab pack reducing fall damage, and the prototype knows this. The prototype is not that dumb. And so, the prototype could have known that Huggy was down there, and as soon as we walked in, Huggy would be released, and the prototype knew that Huggy would kill us. And so in my opinion, it's possible that this theory is true, or the prototype actually helped him. Both actually seem pretty likely. Or it could be the third option, that Huggy is just a force to be reckoned with and just got up right after that fall. And if that's true, then be ready for chapter 5 to be a literal nightmare seeing his face when you start the game.